Good day, everyone. This is Ma'am Henry again, and our topic for today and for this segment is all about communication and ethics. I hope you will learn something about our topic and be able to perform the tasks that will come with this lesson. Okay, so let's start. Now, first, let us define what is ethics because this is the main topic of our segment for today. So let's take a look. What is the clinical definition of communication ethics? Now, based on the definition of communication ethics, it is how a person uses language, media, and in journalism, and sometimes it creates relationships, and it is guided by an individual's moral and values. These ethics consider is being aware of consequences and behavior that we will encounter as we do some actions. Okay, so now I want us to know that ethics is somewhat really relating to doing what is correct or doing what is supposed to be done. So we should never forget that ethics has something to do with doing what is right. Okay, in whatever field we are, we should always bear in mind that whatever we do is governed by our morals and values, and that's considered to be ethics. And that also includes the ethics in communication. Okay, so to continue, here are some key points to remember about communication and relationship with other people. Okay, the first one is advocate truthfulness, honesty, and reason. Of course, we need to be truthful and we need to tell what is truth and what is correct whenever we are faced in situation. This should be our benchmark. What is true should always prevail. Okay, next, we should respect people's diversity and the other people's perspective. We should be tolerant with other people. Of course, whenever there are differences in opinion, we should always be accommodating. We should always understand that it is his or her opinion and he is entitled to it. Okay, next, we should not condemn people for their bad language, but we condemn communication that degrades individual or humanity. Meaning, if we make use of biased language, then that is the thing that we should abhor or fight against, not the person saying. So there's a possibility that we can still correct the person's manner of saying things. So maybe he has forgotten that he is using biased language. So let's just remind him. So condemn communication, but not the person. Okay. And last but not the least, accept that there is possibility of long-term and short-term consequences. Meaning, if we do something and we did something or an action, of course, there's always corresponding reaction or consequences. Whatever might be the consequences for the actions that we take, then we should always be prepared for that. Okay, so we should not walk away on the consequences because remember, guys, there is always the saying, your actions will catch up in you. So it may not be now, it may not be later, but definitely it will catch up on you in its perfect time. Okay, so let's move on to the fundamentals in communication. Now let's consider how ethics work with relationship and leadership, because I know someday most of you will become leaders, proprietors of your own businesses. So we should always consider ethics and leadership. Okay, so to start with, we have there people differ a lot. They cannot be treated in the same manner. That's correct. Because we have different perspectives, we have different understanding, we have different interpretations. So we should also be treated differently according to our perspective. So if you are very strict with this person, then there must be a reason to that. And you can be more lenient with another person, especially if it is very important or the situation calls to be a more lenient employer. Okay, so next we have here, you can get work out of people by making them feel important. That's correct. We should make people feel important, especially if you're an employer, if you're a leader, because if you do so, that means that people are motivated to do whatever task there is. Okay, so next, our actions are more of a habit or emotion than logic. That's true, because whatever we do, especially if it's instantaneous or it is random, we we do not have time to think logically. Most of the time, whatever actions we do is because of our habit or because of emotion. Example, there's something that you felt sorry about. There's a possibility that you will fight because that's normally your habit when you are in this kind of situation. That's your initial reaction. But later on, as you recognize that you are wrong, you realize that you finally did a mistake. And that's when logic comes. Okay. So the last one is, you have to like people to get along with them. I think this is true because for you to be able to see the goodness in the person, we should be able to like them. Now, if we do not like the person, of course, I'm not saying that you should fight or always bicker with that person, but I suggest just be civil. So coexist with that person. So there's no need for you to fight. But if you disagree most of the time and you don't like each other, just coexist. Coexistence is better. Okay? So I think you learned something about leadership, and we're heading on with another topic, especially for misunderstanding in communication. Now, let's see. I think some people still misunderstand each other, especially when there are some reasons, underlying reasons, despite the effort or despite the knowledge of ethics. Even though we follow ethics, there are times that still we misunderstand each other, and that is failure in communication. Okay, so here are some reasons, or here are some barriers that we can consider as reasons in misunderstanding through communication. Okay, now the first one is what we call physical barrier. Now, what do we mean by physical barrier? When we say physical barrier, it refers to the environmental and natural condition that acts as a barrier in communication or in sending message. So from the sender to the receiver, if there's problem in between, then there's possible physical barrier. Example to this physical barrier are interior workplaces, sometimes design of the house, technological problems, and even noise are also considered to be physical barriers. In short, we refer physical barriers are external issues that can hamper communication. So looking at the picture, the people do not understand each other because they have physical distance, perhaps, or technology, and of course, um, for incorrect tool in communication. Okay, so let's move on to another issue that can possibly hamper um, successful communication. Now, the next issue is physiological barrier. Now, what do we mean by physiological barrier? It means that it is a type of barrier which is related to the limitations of human body and the human mind. Example, if we have poor memory, we have poor attention and poor perception, these are considered to be physiological barriers. Sometimes physiological barriers cause um, misunderstanding, and it is resulting to um, people's disagreement. And sometimes physiological barriers are caused by the receiver's personal discomfort during communication. That is the reason why he is unable to perceive correctly what is being delivered or what's the message being delivered. Okay, so example, when someone is ill or sick, of course, this person is unable to comprehend completely well what's the message given to them. That's why we always make accommodations, we always make buffer whenever we talk to someone who is sick, because we always think that he may not be in the proper self or he is not fit enough to understand information. Okay, so another example is when we have poor eyesight. Of course, it's very difficult to read and to get information out of written text if you have poor eyesight or even gestures. It can also hamper understanding if you have poor eyesight, especially if the person talking with you through gesture is in a distance. And of course, hearing difficulties. Of course, these disabilities could definitely affect our perception or our communication process. So those are example of physiological barriers. Okay, so what is next is semantic barrier. When we say semantic, it has something to do with understanding of words. Now, semantic barriers in communication refers to the symbolic obstacles that distorts or hampers our way of understanding or sending message. In some other way, um, this kind of barrier is difficult to um, understand because sometimes people just understand based on their background, right? So the meaning of words, the meaning of actions, uh, the meaning of words that we use, normally is different from one culture to another, from one language to another. So that is semantic barrier. Example, if I live in, if I am from Cebu, and I use a word that is there's similar word in Filipino, in Tagalog, and they mean differently. Of course, if you use these words too of Tagalog and um, to another um, to what's this Cebuano, then what will happen is that they've got different interpretation because that's semantics. That's how they understand the message. Okay, so that has something to do with the language we are using. That is semantic barriers. Okay, so let's move on to the next, which is perceptual barriers. Now, perceptual barriers in communication refers to the internal barriers that occur in a person's mind. This makes a person believe or perceive things depending on his background. Now, perception means the way you interpret things. Okay, so example, if there's a message or there's a poster, and the way you interpret it is based on your background, and another person's interpretation or perception should also differ. And of course, if you've got different perception, different interpretation of your of one information or one message, then that is also a possible cause of misunderstanding. Okay, so let's say that there are still other possible reasons of misunderstanding, or what we call barriers in communication. And of course, we can still enumerate a number or a few of them. So this time, I'll be giving you an exercise. So you should be doing this to to possibly use the barriers that I discussed, or come up with other barriers which I have not discussed. So in the exercise I'll be giving you, I have here the instruction. So the instruction goes: think of a situation in which you experienced misunderstanding someone because of the barriers. So you can um, talk in a group. Perhaps you can find a partner or a group, and then you can record the discussion that you had, and you can upload it in our Google Classroom. Okay, so of course, there are examples of barriers here. So like the language or words or perception. So you cannot be limited with only these things, but you can also think of other barriers which I have not discussed. Okay, so I think that should be good for today, guys. Thank you so much for listening to our segment, to our audio. And please take note that whatever we discuss here will be very necessary, especially with our future activities. Okay, so thank you so much. Have a great day and good luck.